there's so much been written about Alfred Hitchcock. With some people, he would play mind games, and some he wouldn't. With you, how was he? Was there any kind of...
Here's what he did. The first day on the set of The Trouble with Her, he walked over to me and said, "Before you say that line, dog's feet." What do you think that means?
I have no idea.
What are dog's feet?
Dog's feet. Pause.
Before you say that line, pause. That's the way he would direct. So for me, I was so young, I was 18, I think, oh, this is a game, instead of what he probably meant, which was intimidation, because he hated actors.
Hey, Sigourney, I have a trivia question. I mean, I don't know how many people know that your mom was an actress and was in the 39 Steps, Alfred Hitchcock?
And The Letter.
Okay. Well, what did she tell you about working with Hitchcock?
She actually said he wasn't very nice, and he would get sort of, play cruel jokes on people. But I think she thought he was brilliant, of course, and she was thrilled to be in the 39 Steps. She said she just had her hair permed, and in those days you had to like hide for 3 weeks to let it relax. But Hitch called her, and so she had to go in and have her picture taken with these sort of Shirley Temple curls.
When you think back of memorable directors that you worked with, North by Northwest, Alfred Hitchcock, what was that experience like?
I loved it. I mean, that nonsense about him not liking actors is nonsense. I mean, we got along great. We had tea. He saw me in a play in the theater and cast me in the movie, and we were friends virtually up until his death. I had dinner with him on a number of occasions. Alma, his wife, and I know his daughter, Pat. Recently I did a couple of seminars, tributes to him. It was terrific. I mean, he really opened the door and let you play. All the good directors do that. I mean, he storyboarded the thing, but he really kind of handed it over to you. And I played, he saw me in a play in which I played a very macho, male, egocentric guy, and he cast me in this very quiet, economical, homosexual, dangerous guy. And, it takes, again, a guy with vision. And then and this is in the 50s. I chose to play it that way because there was no reason to be in the movie. People said, hey, you're playing a homosexual, it's going to affect your life. Well, I said, hey, I'm an actor. If this is, it's not going to be the last thing I do. I've never played a role like it before, nor since, interestingly. And, but he allowed the way a Coppola does, the way a Woody does, the way a Tim does. I mean, to create a playground for an actor that is a creative space, as opposed to, certain people coming in and they hire a camel and they try to make him into a kangaroo in 5 minutes,
It was different for me as a child when you don't really understand why your mother's being made up all the time or gone, and especially with someone like Hitchcock, who was really in love with her.
Yeah.
And he was kind of strange to me. But anyway.
Yeah, tell me more. Tell me more. Did you visit the set of The Birds and stuff?
Yeah. He sent me a present after The Birds that was either for my birthday or for Christmas, and it was a box, and I opened it, and it was a coffin. And inside...
My, what a wonderful present.
Wait a minute, you haven't heard the best part. Inside of the coffin was a miniature of my mother, dressed as she was in The Birds.
Got a question about a director, Alfred Hitchcock, that you worked with a couple of times, an early film, and then his last movie. What were your observations about working with the master?
Well, I've spent, so my watch is still on LA time, but I've spent 7 hours so far today talking about Walter Hill, who I consider one of the 4 or 5 last filmmakers left in America. Mr. Hitchcock was probably the first and the greatest. Walter is great, but he's not Mr. Hitchcock. On Marnie, which was the first movie I was in with Mr. Hitchcock, I shot a special sequence, so I got a very unique opportunity in that it was just the cameraman, myself, a little girl, and an actress named Louise Latham. The little girl was Tippi Hedren as a little girl, because it was a flashback sequence. And a very special camera that they've never used before or since in a movie. It's only been used in one movie. It was made by Hasselblad. And it was a 35mm lens, but it was an electric light bulb lens that made everything in the foreground distant and everything in the background was sharp. And it was built by Hasselblad and manufactured by Westinghouse. And it's the only movie it's ever been used in, and it cracked as we were finishing the last shot, and they never built it again because even in 1963 when they built it, it cost $2.9 million. So today they say it cost $29 million just to build the lens, because the lens has to be built by hand. So it was unbelievable. And so that was unique. So in that time, I got to know Mr. Hitchcock very, very well. Then I worked several times on Hitchcock episodes of his series. Then came, 12 years later, Family Plot. And I decided on Family Plot I had one or two choices. I could really take my chair and literally put it down next to Mr. Hitchcock every single day and sit there and be with him and get to know him and try and be his friend as well as star in his movie. Or I could just star in a movie. Well, I sought to seek him out, and I did seek him out. And my wife and I became good friends of he and Alma, and he took us to dinner on at least 10 occasions to different places, and he was the best. He was the best storyteller. He was funny. Was a huge man. Nobody knows, he realizes, but I mean, I'll stand up for you now, and I'll show you that I'm 6'2". He was at least 6'3". People don't realize that.
I didn't know that.
He's mammoth. They thought he was a little
guy,
guy,
yeah.
but he stood like this, because his stomach was so enormous that everything was tilted back. But if you eliminated this and put it forward, it would be almost 6'3". And he was quick-witted and just an absolute genius at the camera.
Mr. Hitchcock, to me, his star was the camera. And the performers, whom he had a great deal of respect for, contrary to what I know has been said, which was, you know, he loves to provoke, that's all. But he needed us a lot because we had to be the supporting players to his camera.
You see, to me, that was movie making, because Hitchcock never ever showed a penetration of a weapon, never showed a naked body, even though you would swear on a stack of Bibles that you saw something. You never did, because we couldn't have. There was the Hayes office. You just saw, you know, the editing went so fast that your mind, and you were imagining what was between each one of those edits, and you never saw it.
Yeah.
That's right. I wasn't even in the state. I was in New York City rehearsing a play.
Who was it? Who was that little old lady that was working over Janet?
No, you look at that character. That's a sloping-shouldered man who bears very little physical resemblance to my silhouette. It's interesting. I don't know who he was.
Alfred Hitchcock, I had the pleasure of meeting him years ago, and we sat there and we were intellectualizing on movies and stuff, or I was, as a young guy, and he was saying, he says, remember, Clint, it's only a movie. And I said, yeah, you're right.